across Tim Burton's movies and even his newer projects like Wednesday, there's a hidden pattern running beneath it all. But it's not coincidence. There's a formula behind it, a secret one. Every October, Jack Skellington climbs out of his grave. The corpse bride takes her vow again. And somewhere in the dark, a man with scissors for hands still waits for someone to love what he made. Tim Burton doesn't just make Halloween movies. He owns Halloween itself, because the worlds he builds aren't fantasy. His stories feel older than film, like something passed down, whispered, or summoned. His stories are drawn from real folklore, real death rites, and centuries of art obsessed with crossing the line between life and the afterlife. Behind the striped suits and stitched hearts, Burton's stories follow the same traditions that once called the spirits home. And there's a reason every Tim Burton character looks like they've seen a ghost, because in a way, they have. The seance, the dance of death, the promise that love and loss can raise the dead. This isn't just about movies. This is about how one filmmaker turned ancient superstition into modern myth. You see, his worlds don't come from Hollywood. They crawl out of something older, rituals, folklore, and the strange little beliefs people once used to bargain with death. Because before Burton's characters were merch, they were omens, his pale faces and dark eyes. They all come from somewhere. And the reason we keep coming back to them every October is actually not completely about nostalgia. It's about instinct. He built his career on an ancient ritual, a ritual so powerful, it made Tim Burton the master of Halloween. To understand how Burton built his universe, you have to start in another one. A world where mourning was fashion, ghosts were family, and love didn't stop at the grave. Victorian England, the real birthplace of Burton's imagination, and maybe the moment when Halloween first found its aesthetic. Death wasn't something you avoided. It was something you decorated. Families posed for photographs with the dead, dressed, painted, and arranged to look alive. That's corpse bride energy. In Corpse Bride, the afterlife is romantic, and death itself wears a wedding dress. More on the corpse bride later. They turned hair into jewelry, built glass coffins, and wrote love letters to the afterlife. That's Edward Scissorhands, beauty built from grief. In Edward Scissorhands, creation comes from sorrow, a man carved by loneliness, sculpting angels out of absence. Even seances weren't sinister. They were weekend entertainment. You dim the lights, hold hands, and wait for the table to shake, hoping someone you loved might whisper through the dark. That's Beetlejuice. The Beetlejuice seance scene is a darkly comic mirror of that era. The living exploiting the dead for spectacle and novelty, just like Victorians turned mourning into fashion. Otho's ritual mimics how many Victorians dabbled in spirit communication with no understanding of the forces they invoked. That's the world Tim Burton came from. He's not parodying Victorian death culture. He resurrected it. Every Burton character lives inside that same superstition, that if you love someone enough, you can bring them back. In the 1800s, Victorians tried to make peace with death through art. In the 2000s, Burton did the same thing, and we called it cinema. Queen Victoria herself went into mourning for 40 years after her husband died. An entire empire dressed in black. That era turned mourning into art. That's not just history. That's the DNA of Tim Burton's aesthetic. His characters are born out of that obsession with beautiful decay. Even Wednesday Addams, stoic, deadpan, precise, is pure Victorian. She's the child of a world that believed emotion was unseemly, but tragedy was divine. Her black dress might look like rebellion, but it's Victorian mourning attire. She reads Poe like scripture, plays cello like a seance, and walks through life as if she's already been to the other side. That's what Burton understands, that the Victorians didn't fear death. They tried to curate it. Their art, their fashion, their rituals, all were ways to make loss look elegant. Every frame, every character, every stitched smile says the same thing. Beauty isn't the opposite of death. It's what we build from it. Every character in Burton's world feels familiar, not because we've seen them before, but because our ancestors did. His ghosts are copies of older ghosts. His brides, his skeleton kings, his trickster guides, all borrowed from the folklore of death. Just look at Beetlejuice, the chaos clown of the underworld. Beetlejuice is a mediator between the living and the dead, but deceitful and self-serving. Beneath the jokes, he's an ancient archetype, the trickster psychopomp hybrid, a guide between worlds. In Greek myth, Hermes led souls to Hades. In Egypt, Anubis weighed the hearts of the dead. Beetlejuice is what happens when that kind of spirit goes rogue. He's a guide between worlds, but he's also the conman of the afterlife. Like Loki, he breaks every rule he knows. Like Eshu, the African trickster at the crossroads, he controls access to the dead, but only if the price is chaos. Like the medieval death jesters of Europe, he mocks the sacred to keep death's power alive. He's a carnival god in a black and white suit, a trickster demon who laughs because he knows the ritual better than anyone. He controls communication between worlds, and his energy is unpredictable and chaotic. Jack Skellington, on the other hand, is the positive mirror. He's not a trickster. He's the organizer of the underworld's ritual. Think of him as the dance macabre's master of ceremonies. He doesn't guide individual souls. He orchestrates the collective rhythm of death. His grin comes from medieval church carvings of memento mori, skulls grinning beside saints to remind the living they'll soon join the dance. In myth, he's closer to the medieval image of death as conductor, leading both peasants and kings in the same skeletal dance. The Danse Macabre, the dance of death, a pageant performed in plague-ridden Europe where skeletons led kings and peasants alike to their graves. Jack just turned the choreography into a musical number. Jack's job isn't to tempt or torment, it's to celebrate mortality through ritual. Jack doesn't guide souls, he directs the symphony. He doesn't mock the veil, he lifts it, just enough for a song to pass through. So if Beetlejuice is the underworld's jester priest, Jack is its maestro, the master of the ritual. Together, they form the heartbeat of Burton's mythology, the trickster and the conductor, both dancing on the line between death and performance. And when Burton sent the Headless Horseman charging through Sleepy Hollow in 1999, he was reviving one of Europe's oldest omens, the Wild Hunt. A ghostly procession that thundered across winter skies, led by spectral riders collecting souls. The same legend gave us the Norse Odin on his eight-legged horse Sleipnir, the Irish Dullahan carrying his own skull cracking a whip made of a spine, and the legends from the Germanic north spoke of Wodan, the storm god, riding across the sky with the souls of the dead. Those who saw the Wild Hunt were said to die soon after. Burton's horseman is cut from that same storm, a single rider torn loose from the hunt. still enforcing death's old contract. Burton just filmed it in fog and more gore than a Tarantino movie on a bad day. And that's why his characters last, because they aren't his alone. They belong to a lineage of death that never really died. Every Tim Burton protagonist looks like they don't belong. Pale skin, black eyes, nervous hands. But underneath all that, they're not outcasts. They're magicians, not in the sense of spells and potions, but in the older, sacred sense. People who reshape the world through imagination. In the Middle Ages, alchemists believed that creation itself was a ritual, that turning metal into gold wasn't about wealth, but about transforming the soul. That's Edward Scissorhands. He takes pain and isolation and turns it into art, carving angels, ice sculptures, entire snowfalls out of loneliness. He's not Frankenstein's monster. He's the alchemist's dream, proof that beauty can be summoned from sorrow. And then there's Sally from The Nightmare Before Christmas. She literally sews herself together. She's a creation who refuses to stay in the role she was built for, escaping her maker to reclaim her autonomy. That's necromancy turned into rebellion. Lydia Dietz photographs ghosts, but what she's really doing is proof of spirit, continuing a Victorian obsession called spirit photography, where real families once posed with the dead to prove the afterlife existed. Even Wednesday Addams carries that same current. She experiments with death and channels centuries of witchcraft through intellect. Her spells are psychological. She knows the power of attention, the ability to name darkness and make it beautiful. That's what all of Burton's outsiders do. They take the parts of themselves that the world rejects and alchemize them into something new, channeling creativity through pain. Not evil, not tragic, but transformative. The artist as magician, the lonely as conjurer, the misunderstood as medium. Burton's characters don't cast spells. They are spells, walking rituals made of grief, invention, and impossible tenderness. And maybe that's why his worlds endure. Because in every creation, he's reenacting the oldest magic of all, turning death, difference, and sorrow into something worth loving. In The Nightmare Before Christmas, the line, "This is Halloween," isn't just a chorus. It's an invocation. Every verse is a call and response. Every monster a priest in a ritual of remembrance. Because Halloween, at its core, is a ceremony about return. About the moment when the dead cross back over, not to haunt, but to be remembered. In Celtic tradition, that moment was called Samhain, the night when the veil between worlds was thinnest. Families lit candles in carved turnips, the precursor to jack-o'-lanterns, to guide spirits home. Burton doesn't recreate that ritual, he revives it. Beetlejuice is a Samhain story, the dead refusing to stay dead, haunting the living who've forgotten how to listen. Corpse Bride is another, a love that breaks the boundary between this life and the next. Even Sleepy Hollow is a harvest myth, built around sacrifice, pumpkins, and a spectral rider who won't rest until the ritual is finished. Burton's worlds all share one theme, resurrection as tradition. Every October, we summon his films again on TV marathons, streaming playlists, and theater re-releases. That's why his stories never die, because they're designed to come back, like spirits called by name, like songs that open the door to the other side. And in a way, that's what Halloween always promised. Not the fear of death, but the invitation of it. So, Here's the secret formula to Tim Burton's worlds. They all tell us something deeper about ourselves. His movies are about every outsider who's ever tried to make something beautiful out of what hurts. That's the oldest magic, the one that turns grief into story, fear into wonder, death into meaning. Tim Burton never set out to make scary movies. Every monster he's drawn, every pale outsider, every stitched-together heart is him trying to prove that even what the world calls strange deserves a place to belong. Because Halloween, at its core, was never just about fear. It was about remembrance. The one night a year when we honor the things that came before us, the spirits, the stories, the shadows that built us. Burton didn't just borrow that ritual. He gave it a face, a stitched grin, a hollow-eyed bride, a ghost in pinstripes who laughs at death because he's been there and came back over and over again. Because beneath the Gothic frames and crooked houses, his message is always the same. That beauty isn't the absence of death. It's what we create in spite of it. Tim Burton doesn't own Halloween because he made it spooky. He owns it because he made it sacred. Every frame he shoots feels like a seance, calling back ghosts of old stories and giving them faces we can love again. That's what artists have always done, the storytellers, the visionaries. They never created magic from nothing. They summoned what was already there and made it visible. And that's what Burton does. He built a world where Halloween isn't just a holiday. It's a recurring dream that returns every year to remind us what beauty looks like in the dark. He gave the strange a language. So when we carve pumpkins or press play on Beetlejuice or Nightmare Before Christmas, we're not just celebrating a director. We're continuing the ritual. Halloween used to be a night for the dead to walk among us. Now, it's the night Tim Burton's world comes back to life. Let me know in the comments which Tim Burton film is your favorite and which character do you relate to the most. If you liked this one, you might also like this video. It's about the woman who became the blueprint for every Gothic heroine Tim Burton ever imagined. Thanks for watching.